The sun was hot and cruel, burning the ground until it cracked like broken glass. Dust floated in the air, sticking to skin, hair, and clothes. The small market in the alien village was almost silent, except for the sound of the wind blowing. Between the ruined stone walls, people moved quietly from stall to stall, but their eyes kept turning to one figure walking slowly down the street. It was a woman, tall and thin. Her skin a soft blue that caught the sunlight. Her hair was long and dark, tangled by wind and neglect. In her arms, she held a small child close to her chest. The child's head rested on her shoulder, eyes half closed, too tired to cry. The woman's steps were slow, each one heavy, as if her legs carried more than her own weight. Around her, people whispered a single word, cursed. The whispers moved through the air like poison. Some turned away when she passed. Others spat on the ground. No one reached out to help her. Her clothes were worn thin, torn at the edges, the fabric hanging loosely over her body. The child was wrapped in a piece of cloth that had once been warm, now ragged and dusty. The woman stopped at a stall, her voice soft as she asked for food. The vendor looked at her for a long moment before shaking his head. "Not for you," he said, and turned away. Her lips pressed together, but she didn't argue. She had heard those words too many times. The child gave a small whimper, and she adjusted her hold, rocking gently as if the motion alone could fill his stomach. She kept walking, past more stalls, each one refusing her with cold eyes or silent gestures. Her shadow stretched long on the dusty ground, and then another shadow fell across hers. She looked up to see a man standing there. He was not from the village. His skin was human, his eyes deep and watchful. He wore dark armor, scratched from use, straps across his chest holding supplies. The wind caught a few strands of his hair, but his gaze stayed fixed on her. There was no disgust in his eyes, no fear, only curiosity. The woman stopped, unsure what he wanted. For a moment, they just stood there, the crowd around them watching with narrowed eyes. Finally, she spoke, her voice tired and low. "No one wants us, human." Her words hung in the air like dust, heavy and slow. The man's brow furrowed, as if he had heard something he did not understand. He stepped closer, and the people nearby stepped back, muttering to each other. "What happened to you?" he asked, his voice calm. The woman shook her head, holding the child tighter. "It does not matter," she said. "They will not touch me. They will not touch him. They think we bring death." The man glanced at the villagers, then back at her. His hand moved to his pack, pulling something out. It was a small bundle of food, bread and dried fruit. He held it out to her. She stared at it, then at him, suspicion flickering in her eyes. "Why?" she asked. "Because you're hungry," he said simply. The child reached a tiny hand toward the food, fingers trembling. The woman's breath caught, and her eyes filled with wetness. Slowly, she took the food, breaking a piece and placing it in the child's mouth. The boy chewed weakly, and for a moment, the woman closed her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. The man nodded once, his face unreadable. Behind them, someone hissed, "You'll catch her curse." The man ignored it, still watching the woman and child. He crouched slightly so his eyes were level with hers. "You have a place to go?" he asked. She shook her head. "Nowhere wants us," she said again, the words tasting bitter. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of dust and heat. The man stood up, glancing toward the open road beyond the market. "You can come with me," he said. The woman looked at him as if she wasn't sure she had heard correctly. The villagers nearby muttered louder, some shaking their heads, some glaring openly. "You don't know what she is," one man shouted. The human turned his head, slightly, his voice steady. "I know what she is and she isn't what you say." A silence fell for a moment, broken only by the crying of the child who had finished eating and wanted more. The man offered his hand. The woman hesitated, her heart pounding. She looked down at her son, his small face, tired but trusting. Then she looked at the human's hand again. Her own hand rose slowly, fingers brushing his. In that small touch, something shifted in the air. The villagers watched, some with fear, some with disbelief. The man's hand closed around hers, steady and firm, without another word. He turned toward the road. She followed, holding the child close. The wind swept across the empty market, erasing their footprints almost as soon as they were made. But the memory of that moment stayed in the eyes of those who had seen it. The road beyond the market was empty, stretching toward the horizon like a long scar across the desert. The human walked ahead, his steps steady, while the blue-skinned woman followed close behind, holding her child tightly. Her eyes kept darting back toward the village, half expecting to see angry faces chasing after them. But there was nothing, only the wind in the endless dry land. The child stirred in her arms, making small sounds, and she adjusted her grip to keep him comfortable. The human slowed his pace so she could walk beside him. "What's your name?" he asked. Without looking at her, she hesitated, then said softly, "Sira." "And the boy?" he asked. "Liar," she replied, her voice low but warm. They walked in silence for a moment, the crunch of sand beneath their feet the only sound. Finally, the human asked, "Why do they call you cursed?" Sira's lips tightened, her eyes looking far away. "My husband," she began, "died on a night when the sky burned red with lightning." Her voice shook slightly, but she kept speaking. "They say the storm came because of me, that my presence brought it." She looked down at Liar, brushing a bit of dust from his cheek. "When Liar was born after his father's death, they said he was touched by the same curse." The human frowned, his brow furrowing in thought. "So they punished you for something they couldn't understand," he said. Sira gave a bitter smile. "They feared us, and fear makes people cruel." She told him how her family had turned her away, how the elders forbade anyone from helping her. If someone gave her food, they would be shunned. If someone spoke to her, they would be watched. "And so I learned to keep my head down," she said. "I learned not to ask for help, because help was dangerous for anyone who gave it." Her voice was calm, but the pain was in her eyes. The human glanced at her, then at the child. "You've been surviving alone all this time?" he asked. "Yes," she said simply, "though some days it feels like barely surviving." The road curved slightly, leading them toward a line of rocky hills. The sun dipped lower, painting the desert in golden shadow. "You could have left the village long ago," the human said. Sira shook her head. "Where would I go? Other villages might be the same, maybe worse." Her fingers tightened on Liar's blanket. "And if I wandered too far with him and something happened, no one would even know." The human's jaw set in quiet determination. "You're with me now," he said. "I'm not afraid of curses." Sira gave him a small, skeptical glance. "They'll say the same about you now," she warned. "I've been called worse," he replied with a faint smile. They walked until the sun was almost touching the horizon. The human found a spot between two large rocks, sheltered from the wind. "This will do for tonight," he said, setting his pack down. Sira hesitated before sitting across from him, Liar resting in her lap. The human started a small fire, the smoke curling upward into the cooling air. As the flames grew, Sira watched them dance, her thoughts drifting. She remembered nights alone, curling up in shadows to hide from the cold and from eyes that hated her. This night felt different, warmer. The human handed her a piece of dried meat and some bread. She accepted it with a quiet thank you. Liar nibbled on a small bit of bread, his eyes half closing with comfort. After they ate, Sira asked, "Why are you here, human? This planet is not your home." He poked at the fire with a stick, sparks rising into the darkening sky. "I travel," he said. "I trade. I search for things worth keeping." Sira tilted her head. "And you think I'm worth keeping?" The human looked at her directly, his voice steady. "I think no one should be left to die because of fear." Her eyes softened, but she didn't reply. They sat in silence for a while, the night settling in around them. The wind whistled through the rocks, but the fire held strong. In the distance, a faint howl echoed animal or something else. Sira pulled Liar closer. Danger? She asked. Not tonight, the human said calmly, his hand resting on the weapon at his side, just in case. The flames cast light on Sira's face, making her eyes shimmer. You know, she said quietly, you are the first to sit with me since my husband died. The human didn't respond immediately, but his gaze was steady. You won't be the last, he finally said. They stayed awake a while longer, speaking little. The stars came out one by one, until the sky was filled with them. Sira found herself looking at the human and feeling, for the first time in years, that maybe she was not as alone as she thought. Liar slept peacefully, the fire crackling beside them, far away. Unseen eyes watched from the darkness. The past was not ready to let her go, and the road ahead would not be easy. But for now, there was a fire, a child's steady breathing, and the quiet presence of someone who had not turned away. Morning came slowly, the first light stretching across the desert and touching the rocky hills with soft gold. The small fire from the night before had burned down to warm embers. Sira woke to the sound of the human moving quietly, packing his things with practiced hands. Liar still slept in her arms, his small chest rising and falling gently. She rubbed her eyes and sat up, feeling the stiffness in her back from sleeping on stone. The human glanced at her and gave a small nod. We'll need to move soon, he said, but eat first. He handed her a pouch with dried fruit and bread. She hesitated for only a moment before accepting. The sweetness of the fruit felt strange after so many days of hunger. Liar woke and reached for a piece, chewing slowly. Sira kept her eyes on the horizon, wondering where he would take them. You said you travel, she began cautiously. The human nodded, adjusting the straps on his pack. Then where are you going now? She asked. He paused for a moment before answering. Away from the people who want to hurt you. Her lips pressed into a thin line. They will say, you are cursed now too, she warned again. I've survived worse than words, he replied. Calmly, they started walking. The morning air still cool, but promising heat later. The human walked with long, steady steps, always checking the terrain ahead. Sira followed, keeping Liar close to her chest. After some time, she finally asked, the question that had been on her mind since yesterday, why are you helping us? The human glanced at her, his eyes unreadable. Because I can, he said simply. And because you need it. She frowned, unused to such a simple answer. Most people only gave help when they wanted something in return. You don't even know me, she said quietly. I know enough, he replied. I know you've been treated unfairly, and I know your child deserves a chance. Sira's grip on Liar tightened. She had heard words like that in her dreams, but never from someone awake. They walked until the sun was higher, heat rising from the ground in shimmering waves. When they stopped to drink water, the human looked at her directly. I have a place, he said, a small settlement, far from here. Sira tilted her head, unsure if she believed him. It's not much, he continued, but no one there will call you cursed. Her breath caught slightly at his words. A place where no one would whisper or spit. As she passed sounded like a dream, too fragile to touch. Still, her voice was cautious. Why would they accept me? Because I will tell them to, he said simply, as if it was not even a question. Sira stared at him for a long moment. She didn't understand this human. He spoke as if kindness was a normal thing. In her life, kindness had always come with chains. You can come with me, if you want, he added. Her steps slowed, the weight of the offer pressing on her. It sounded so easy, yet she knew it was not. Trust was a dangerous thing. What if I say no? She asked, testing him. He shrugged lightly. Then I'll still give you enough food for the journey to wherever you decide to go. Sira blinked, surprised. Most people would take offense, or push harder. You really don't want anything from me? She asked. The human's voice was steady. Just the truth when you're ready to share it. She looked away, unsure how to answer. The rest of the day passed quietly, their path winding through low canyons and dry riverbeds. Liar slept often, his small face peaceful in her arms. The human stopped once to pick a cluster of strange desert berries, testing them before offering a few to Sarah. "They're safe," he said, "and sweet." She tasted one and was surprised at the burst of flavor. By late afternoon, they reached a place where stone cliffs rose high on either side. The human decided they would camp there for the night, while he gathered dry branches for the fire. Sarah sat with Liar, tracing her fingers along his tiny hand. Her thoughts kept returning to his offer. She imagined walking into a place where people did not turn away, where her son could play without fear. But then she imagined trusting him, and finding out it was a lie. When the fire was lit and the night began to settle in, she finally asked, "What if I slow you down?" The human looked at her across the flames. "Then I walk slower," he said. His voice was so matter-of-fact that she almost laughed. "You make it sound so easy," she murmured. "Not easy," he corrected. "Just worth it." She stared into the fire, feeling something she had not felt in years, a quiet, steady hope. The wind outside the cliffs whispered over the sand. The human adjusted his cloak and leaned back against a rock. "You don't have to decide tonight," he said. "But tomorrow we'll need to keep moving." Sarah nodded, her fingers still holding Liar close. She didn't say yes, but she didn't say no either. And for the first time, she allowed herself to wonder what it would be like if she said yes. The morning air was cool, carrying a faint scent of stone and dry grass. The first light touched the canyon walls, painting them in shades of gold and red. The human was already awake, checking the straps on his pack and making sure his supplies were secure. Sarah rose slowly, careful not to wake Liar, who was still sleeping in the blanket beside her. She brushed some dust from her clothes and splashed water on her face from the small flask. The human handed her a piece of bread and a strip of dried meat. "Eat," he said simply. They shared a quiet meal, the only sounds the soft rustle of the wind and the distant cry of some bird. When they were ready, the human adjusted his pace to match hers. The path ahead left the safety of the canyon and opened into a wide plain where the horizon seemed impossibly far. Sarah carried Liar on her back, his small hands clutching at her shoulders as he peeked out at the empty land. The human kept scanning the surroundings, his eyes sharp and alert. They walked in silence for a long time, the rhythm of their steps settling into something almost peaceful. From time to time, he pointed out landmarks, an oddly shaped rock, a dry riverbed, a distant ridge. Sarah listened, storing the names in her mind. She had never left her village before, and everything felt strange and new. Around midday, they stopped in the shade of a large stone outcrop. The human offered her water, and she accepted gratefully. "Not much shade after this," he warned. "We'll push through before the heat gets worse." As they walked again, Sarah noticed that the human often glanced back, checking their trail. "Are you expecting someone?" she asked quietly. "Maybe," he replied. "Tracks yesterday told me someone might be following." Her stomach tightened. "From the village?" she asked. He didn't answer, but the look in his eyes told her enough. They moved faster, though he was careful not to exhaust her. By late afternoon, they reached the edge of a rocky slope leading down into a valley. From here, she could see green small patches of it, but enough to make her heart lift. "Water," the human said, pointing toward a glimmer in the distance. They made their way down carefully, the rocks shifting under their feet. At the bottom, a thin stream wound its way between clusters of hardy plants. Liar wriggled with excitement at the sight of water, and Sarah knelt to let him touch it. The boy laughed softly, the sound making her chest ache with a mix of joy and sadness. The human filled their flasks while keeping watch. As they drank, Sarah asked, "How far is your settlement?" "2 more days if we're lucky," he said. "And if we're not?" she pressed. "Then 3 or 4, he answered without hesitation. That night, they camped near the stream. The human set up the fire while Sarah bathed Liar with a cloth. washing away some of the dust of the road. The boy curled up in her lap, warm and clean, and she hummed a soft lullaby under her breath. The human sat across from her, listening quietly. "You sing well," he said after a while. She shook her head. "It's just an old song my mother sang." They ate a simple meal, and when the stars came out, the human traced a few in the sky, naming them in a language she didn't know. Sira found herself watching him more closely. There was no greed in his actions, no hidden cruelty. He treated her and Liar as if their presence was natural, not a burden. Still, part of her mind whispered warnings. Trust was dangerous, and she had learned that lesson too many times. The firelight flickered over his face, casting shadows that made him look both dangerous and kind. Before they slept, he said, "We'll take the high ridge tomorrow. It's slower, but safer." Sira nodded, feeling a little safer herself with him near. She lay down beside Lear, the warmth of his small body grounding her. As sleep took her, she dreamed not of curses, but of walking into a place where no one turned away. Far off in the darkness, somewhere beyond the ridge, eyes were watching. The journey had begun, but the road ahead would test them more than either of them yet knew. The morning broke with a pale light, cool and thin. The stream they had camped beside was quiet, its soft trickle the only sound in the early hours. The human was already awake, crouched near the water, scanning the opposite bank. Sira stirred, and sat up slowly, brushing the dust from her clothes. Liar still slept soundly, his small face peaceful in the thin blanket. The human's eyes narrowed as he studied the ground. "What is it?" Sira asked, her voice low. "Tracks," he said simply. "Fresh." Her stomach tightened. "From animals?" she asked hopefully. He shook his head. "Too clean. Too straight. These are boots." Her breath caught. She glanced around, half expecting to see figures rising from behind the rocks. "They've been following since yesterday," he continued. "And they're closer now." Sira's heart pounded. "From the village?" she asked. "Most likely," he replied. "They don't want to let you go." She looked down at Liar, sleeping without knowing the danger. Her arms instinctively went to gather him close. The human's voice was steady, but his eyes were sharp. "We'll move fast today," he said, "and we won't take the open road." They packed quickly, the fire from the night before leaving only a faint trace of ash. The human led them into the hills, keeping two narrow paths and shadowed ledges. The ground here was uneven, forcing them to move carefully. From time to time, he stopped to listen, his head turning slightly to catch distant sounds. Once, Sira thought she heard voices far behind them, but the wind carried them away before she could be sure. The sun climbed higher, heating the rocks until the air shimmered. Liar whimpered softly, thirsty and tired. They stopped briefly in the shade of a leaning cliff. The human handed her the water flask, watching the horizon as she gave Liar a drink. Sira's mind raced with fear. "What will they do if they catch us?" she asked. The human's jaw tightened. "They'll take you back, and I don't think they'll let me walk away." She swallowed hard, holding Liar tighter. "They don't have the right," she said. "They believe they do," he replied, grimly. By afternoon, they reached a narrow canyon with high walls of red stone. The human guided them inside, moving quickly but quietly. The shade cooled the air, but the silence felt heavy. Sira kept glancing behind them. Every shadow seemed alive. Every small sound made her grip Liar's blanket tighter. Halfway through the canyon, the human stopped suddenly. He crouched low, signaling her to do the same. Voices faint, but clear off the stone walls. Sira's breath caught. She could make out words now, sharp and angry. "They went this way," one voice said. Her pulse raced. The human motioned for her to follow him into a narrow gap in the rock. It was barely wide, enough for them to squeeze through. Inside, the space was dark and cool, hidden from the main path. They waited, silent. The voices grew louder, boots crunching on gravel. Sira pressed her back against the rock, holding Liar so close she could feel his heartbeat. Through a thin slit in the stone, she saw them 3 men from the village, armed with short spears. They moved slowly, scanning the canyon walls. One of them paused, turning his head as if listening. Her breath froze in her throat. But after a moment, he moved on, following the others deeper into the canyon. The humans stayed still, watching until their footsteps faded. Only then did he exhale. "They'll circle back," he said quietly. "We need to be far away before they do." They slipped out of the gap and took a side path that climbed steeply up the canyon wall. The climb was hard, the rocks rough under their hands. By the time they reached the top, the sun was dipping toward the horizon. From here, Sira could see the canyon stretching far below. Empty now, but holding the memory of danger, the human pointed to a jagged ridge in the distance. "If we reach that tonight, they won't follow past it," he said. She nodded, too tired to speak. They pushed on, the wind stronger up here, tugging at their clothes. When night finally fell, they found shelter in a hollow beneath a large boulder. Sira sank down, exhausted, Liar already asleep against her. The human sat at the entrance, watching the darkness. "You should rest," she said softly. "Not yet," he replied, his voice calm but alert. She looked at him, the firelight from their small flame casting his shadow long on the stone. Despite the fear and exhaustion, she felt safer with him there. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but tonight they had escaped, and that was enough for now. The wind was sharp, on the ridge, carrying the faint smell of dust and stone. Dawn had barely broken when the human woke Sira, his voice low and urgent. "They're close," he said. "Too close." Her eyes widened, the sleep fading instantly. She gathered Liar into her arms, feeling his small body stir in confusion. The human was already packing their few belongings. His movements fast but controlled. Sira could see the tension in his shoulders, the way his eyes scanned the horizon every few seconds. They began moving along the narrow ridge path, the drop on either side steep and unforgiving. The sky was pale and cloudless, offering no cover. For a time, the only sound was their footsteps on the rock. But then it came, the echo of boots, steady and deliberate. Sira's breath caught. "They've found us," she whispered. The human didn't look back. "Keep walking," he said. "Don't stop until I tell you." The footsteps grew louder. Joined by the low murmur of voices, Sira clutched Liar tighter, her heart thudding painfully in her chest. At the far end of the ridge, the path widened into a flat stretch of ground, bordered by jagged stones. The human stopped there, turning to face the direction they had come. Sira froze, realizing he meant to stand his ground. "They'll be here any moment," she said, her voice shaking. "I know," he replied, his tone calm. Liar whimpered softly, sensing the tension in the air. The first figure appeared, tall villager with a spear, his face twisted in anger. 2 more followed, their eyes locked on Sira. "There she is," one of them shouted. The leader stepped forward. "You will come back with us, woman," he said coldly. "The child too?" Sira's grip on Liar tightened until her knuckles ached. "She's not going anywhere with you," the human said, his voice like stone. The villagers exchanged glances. "She belongs to the village." The leader growled. "You have no claim. I don't need a claim to protect someone from cruelty," the human replied. One of the men spat on the ground. "You don't understand, she brings death." The human's eyes narrowed. "The only death I see is the one you bring with your hate." The tension thickened, the air heavy with the unspoken promise of violence. The leader raised his spear. "Stand aside," he said, "or we will go through you." The human stepped forward, drawing the short blade from his side. "You can try," he said quietly. Sira's breath came fast, fear and disbelief swirling inside her. The men spread out, trying to flank him. The first lunged, but the human sidestepped, striking the shaft of the spear with his blade. It cracked, splintering in the man's hands. The second came in fast, swinging his spear like a club. The human blocked it with his forearm and drove his shoulder into the man's chest, sending him stumbling back. The leader hesitated, his eyes narrowing. "This is not your fight," he hissed. "It is now," the human answered. The leader lunged, aiming low. The human met him halfway, their weapons clashing with a sharp ring. For a moment, they locked in place, neither giving ground. Then the human twisted, sending the leader off balance and forcing him back a step. "You're not taking them," he said, his voice steady. The leader's eyes flicked to Sira. "You think you can protect her forever?" He spat. "As long as I breathe," the human replied. The leader let out a sharp whistle, and more figures appeared on the ridge behind them. Sira's heart sank, but the human didn't flinch. "You want her," he said, his voice carrying across the space. "You'll have to come all at once." The new arrivals hesitated. Seeing the determination in his stance, the leader took a slow step back. "This isn't over," he said, his tone full of promise. Then he turned, and one by one, the others followed. Sira's knees weakened as they disappeared into the distance. The human lowered his blade but didn't put it away until the last of them was gone from sight. She walked toward him, her voice trembling. "You could have been killed." He looked at her, his expression unreadable. "So could you." For a moment, they just stood there, the wind swirling around them. Then he turned toward the path ahead. "We keep moving," he said. Sira followed, her grip on Liar still tight. The danger had passed for now, but she knew the memory of this day would follow them long after they reached safety. The ridge gave way to gentler slopes as they moved forward. The air was cooler here, carrying the faint scent of green. For the first time in days, Sira saw more than dust and stone ahead. Small patches of grass spread like quiet promises, and scattered trees reached their branches toward the sky. The human kept a steady pace, but his shoulders relaxed just slightly. Sarah could feel the shift. The way the tension of constant danger began to ease. Liar stirred on her back, waking too. The sound of birds calling from somewhere unseen. She smiled faintly, brushing his hair back with her fingers. The path wound between low hills, each one hiding a glimpse of something softer than the harsh desert. By midday, they reached a rise, and beyond it lay a small valley cradled between the hills. Houses, simple but strong, stood in clusters, their walls pale against the green. Fields around them, a thin ribbon of water, wound through the center, catching the sunlight like silver. Children played near the stream, their laughter rising in the warm air. Sarah stopped, staring. The human glanced at her, his voice calm. "This is it." Her lips parted, but no words came. She had imagined safety before, but she had never truly seen it. They walked down into the valley, the smell of cooking fires drifting toward them. People noticed their arrival, turning curious eyes toward the strangers. Sira's heart pounded, memories of other villages rising like shadows, but she saw no fear in their faces. Some nodded in greeting, others offered small smiles. The human led her to a house near the stream, its roof patched with fresh wood, its doorway wide and welcoming. Inside, the air was cool and smelled faintly of herbs. "This will be your place," he said, setting his pack down. Sira looked around, touching the smooth wood of the doorway, as if to make sure it was real. "Why here?" she asked softly. "Because it's far enough," he said. "And because no one here will care about curses." Her throat tightened. Liar wriggled in her arms, and she set him down on the clean floor. He immediately began exploring, his small hands patting the smooth boards. The sound of his soft laughter filled the room. The human watched for a moment, then stepped outside. Sira followed him to the stream, where the water ran clear over small stones. "This place," he said quietly, "was built by people who had nowhere else to go." She looked at him sharply. "Like me," she said. "Exactly," he replied. The afternoon passed in a gentle rhythm, neighbors coming by to greet them. One woman brought bread still warm from the fire. Another gave a small carved toy for Liar, who clutched it in his tiny hands. No one asked about her past, No one whispered. That night, the human lit a small lamp in the corner of the house. The glow filled the room with a soft warmth. Sira sat with Lyre in her lap, feeling the strange sensation of being safe. Her voice trembled as she said, "I don't know how to thank you. You already have," he said simply. She frowned slightly. "How?" "By surviving," he answered. Silence filled the space. Comfortable and full. Outside, the sound of the stream was steady. The air carried the scent of night flowers. Sira thought of the road behind them, the dust, the stones, the voices, calling her Kirsten. Then she thought of the road ahead. For the first time, it didn't feel like a road she had to walk alone. She looked at the human, his face calm in the lamplight. "You could have left me in the market," she said. Quietly, "I could have," he agreed, "but then I wouldn't be here." Her lips curved in the smallest smile. Lyre yawned, curling against her chest. The human stood, checking the door before settling down near the wall. "You can rest now," he said. "You're safe here." The words sank deep, wrapping around her like the blanket she held around. Her son Sira closed her eyes, letting the quiet wash over her. In the morning, she would wake to a new life. The curse was gone not by magic, but by kindness and the choice of someone who saw her worth. And in that valley, with the stream singing softly outside, the widow and her child began again.